if you see your body as separate, which meditation helps enormously with this, you can see that your body is intuit.
Welcome to The Reluctant Medium, where we cover the gamut of out there conversations. With an open mind and a curious heart, we want to talk about it all. From psychic phenomena and energy medicine to beings from other star systems and out-of-body experiences. You'll find a great balance between grounded science-backed topics and others that science hasn't quite caught up to yet. I'm your host, Dr. Maria Rothenberger, a psychotherapist by trade and a reluctant spirit baby communicator. And hey, even though I'm a medium, I'm not buying everything folks are selling. I just have a voracious appetite to know more about what I call the world of the weird. Join us on your favorite podcast platform or watch on YouTube at The Reluctant Medium. I'll see you there. Hey, welcome everyone to the Reluctant Medium podcast. Woo, we got some energy vibing in this podcast episode today. I've got Cheri Flake on. She is the stress therapist, LCSW, licensed clinical social worker for folks who aren't familiar. And just looking at your website briefly, Cheri, it says she teaches people how to get better at stress, stay motivated, and stop procrastinating while working on healthy habits like meditation. Please, yes, please, on the meditation. Yes. And I suspect that, well, oh my gosh, there's a little bit of stress in the world right now, a little bit. So I suspect you're quite needed, but also I suspect the topic that we are going to be talking about today, which is intuition, comes in a lot to your practice, as well as meditation being one of the tools that we can use to tap into that. But I'm going to let you talk about that. First of all, who are you and what do you do? And how did you come?
Who am I or how am I? I'm great. I'm in my little pink tree house.
Okay, both. Who are you and how are you? How did you become a
exactly
therapist,
like
too?
you. I'm a holy creation and creator, and I'm having a temporary human experience, right? I am the stress therapist. So yeah, it's been busy, really busy. I teach people how to get better at stress. And I kind of got into it. You know, I was a social worker and I was running around with a band. I was 27 for 13 years. It was amazing. My manager's like, you're still 20. And I was running around with a pop band and I was really super busy and I had a million things going on. And of course, you know how we go into this business, we go into it to heal ourselves, and I ended up getting really sick with something that was stress related. They couldn't figure out and I almost didn't make it. And they're like, you have to change. And I'm like, no way. I can't be like a yoga meditation lady. No. And at the time, my little practice was focused on really getting people. Well, I had only been working with people with schizophrenia for a good long time. They were my favorite people. They're probably still my favorite people in the world. God shines on them. I mean, who else in this world wants to be normal? It's so beautiful. Everybody wants to be extraordinary, but there's something beautiful about being normal. Anyway, so I used to help people find jobs and live their life and maybe meet someone and just with their day-to-day living and getting through day-to-day living and grappling with chronic mental illness. And then I was running around with this band and we had just enough success to make it really fun, right? Like we were touring all around and we had a hit Beep Beep, if you want to look it up on Spotify. My band was 13 Stories. I did write some songs about meditating. I did do that. And then I had this thing happen and everything had to change. And I thought it was the end, but as you know, it's always the beginning, right? So I had to change and I was teaching people how to live their dreams, right? I was like, if you want to be a pop star, be a pop star. If you want to run, run. And I had videos on YouTube before it was like anybody knew what it was on how to make running habitual, you know, how to make this habitual, like whatever it is in your life, you can make it habitual because you get 168 waking hours of your life. How are you going to spend them? You better be doing what your gifts are from this universe. Otherwise, you're going to be sad and your desires don't give up on you, even if you give up on them. Like we all know someone who's like 80 and they're like, well, here are the reasons why I still can't write the book. You're like, you probably should write that book. Like it's not going to stop. Right. So I was teaching people how to live out whatever it is they wanted to do. And I was like, holy smokes, I'm going to have to learn how to make meditation habitual and yoga.
How did you know?
I don't know. I guess I was already doing some yoga, so I had some exposure to it. I was a person who was really anxious during Shavasana. I wanted to leave early. And I grew up in a household that was a little, everyone had their heart on their sleeve, right? Emotions are high. Like if you were mad, you just said, I'm mad. If you were happy, you were like, I'm happy. Like it's really overwhelming, and I was the youngest. And I just really liked the idea of learning how to be flexible on the inside and the outside, which I didn't expect from yoga. I really thought it was like fitness. And then it ended up being like an inside thing for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to teach people how to make meditation habitual. I don't know if your listeners are meditators, but most people would love to meditate because I do think it's inside of our little hearts to be still. But it's difficult to make it habitual. And the reason why is, I think, according to me, little me, you can use your ego identity, and that's a psych term, your identity, who you think of yourself as. You can use your ego to get you to do anything. You can be like, I'm going to be a runner and I'm going to be so cute and I'm going to get a dog and I'm going to know all my neighbors and I'm going to be so fit and my heart's going to be so healthy. Like you can use your ego to get you to do it, right? You can be like, I'm going to learn guitar because my bass player says no man learns how to play the guitar for any old reason except to get chicks, right? So like that's the initial, right? But when you go to be like, I'm going to make meditation habitual so I can get my ego to be quiet, it's kind of hard, And so most people like they have all these good intentions and they have meditated before. They feel how wonderful it is. And then they're like, well, I'll do it later. And then they're like, well, I should do this first. And then I should look at the Instagram and then I should do this thing. And then I should clean the gutters. And like at the end of the day, it just never happened. And it doesn't matter how badly they want to do it. It doesn't matter how badly they want to need it. A friend of mine wrote a book called Change or Die. And it's about heart patients that, they're like, you have to change or you're going to die. And they don't change it. It's like it's amazing. Like we really do need the tools to make things habitual. So I keep like obsessed with that. And I like started loving that. And now I teach people how to make meditation habitual. And Maria, it's amazing. They're just doing the work to learn how to make meditation habitual. And they're reaping the lifelong amazing benefits that you can get from it. There's so many. And depending on who you're talking to, you can tweak it. Like, yeah, your blood pressure might go down. Rheumatoid arthritis. My husband had cancer, all the pain and everything. He preferred meditation over pain pills. I didn't believe any of that until I was in the hospital with him. And then there's the benefits that you could never guess. Like, I don't think I ever saw a sunset until I started meditating, Maria. Like, I didn't even notice them. I didn't even give a shit about them. Now I don't want to miss one. I have one painted on my wall. Like every time the sun's going down, I'm running outside and I could commune with a ladybug. I couldn't even take a deep breath before I started, y'all. So it's kind of like if someone like me, and I know I seem so chill now, right? I'm just kidding. Well, you can imagine how crazy hyper I was before. I was like a spinning top. You know what I mean? And now I can actually, instead of hyper focus or be super distracted or anxious or worried or sick all the time with dis-ease or whatever. Now I don't take any pills. I'm fucking 50. I'm loving. I'm like, I've never been this healthy. I've never been this happy. Shit goes down. Don't get me wrong, but like it's all in the way that you take it and the way that you think about it, and just kind of recognizing that your brain is listening and that it's real tricky. That little ego in there. You got to be real careful what you say to yourself because there are two of you, right? Not one. And the sooner you know that, the easier your life's going to be. You can't just say any old thing to yourself. And if you're sick of yourself or hate yourself or mad at yourself, there must be two, right? Meditation is cool because it hones the skill of being the listener, right?
Yes.
And knowing that you're separate from something, right?
Well, this is writing right into intuition.
Mm-hmm.
So, because, all right, let me just ask you, what is intuition?
Dude, I think it's gut, it's gut knowing. And here's the way that you know intuition, that the woo-woo with intuition is true 100% of the time. Okay. Show me someone on this earth who has ever said, I can't believe I listened to my gut. Nobody says that. That never happens. Instead, you're in a city you've never been in. Your little Waze is like, or Google Maps is like, turn left. You're like, and you've never even been there. You turn left because Waze knows, AI, whatever, right? And then you're like, I knew it. Okay, like you knew it. I don't know how you knew it, but you knew it. And no one ever says, I can't believe I did that. They always say, I wish I would have. I wish I would have. And I don't know if you've read the book, The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. Oh, what? Okay. Now that's extreme, extreme. It's not even like using intuition, right? It's like relying on like just the universe to push you along and push on your back and do all these things, right? But it's like a nice little intro to the idea that guess what? You might not know, your little ego identity might not know everything. So I tell people, set a timer for 2 minutes and sit and feel what your body feels like. Don't think about anything else, right? Just think about that. How does that feel? How does that sit with you? Close your beautiful eyes and think about the inside of your left knee. Just think about the inside of your left knee taking up space, that kind of thing. After a minute or two, your brain gets this real clear message that your knee is just existing in space, that there's nothing to worry about. The snarky email from your boss, like all those things that could turn into physical symptoms, that you can reel it in by having a somatic focus.
I love that you highlight that people have control. They can rein it in. They can choose. It's empowering. I think it's a beautiful line of thinking, because I think that, again, this is connected to my questions about, or I'm wondering about your insights around intuition and how people can tap into it. Because when people have a somatic response that is from trauma, do you think, or is it different or the same or along the same lines as intuition, or is that different?
The reason why I don't think it's the same is because trauma feels bad. Okay. And intuition feels good. And so it can be a guide for you. If you've ever talked to someone who's been massively successful on something, it doesn't matter what it is, they describe it as a flow, right? They're not like, and then I tried this and that didn't work. And then that was horrible. And then it was awful. And then I ended up crying my eyes out and that was miserable. And then this door was shut and then that was awful. They're like, oh, this didn't work. And then I met this person and then she had this idea. And then this had like, they're talking about it as it like rolled along. And again, I just think use your body as the tool that you have. We rarely come into our bodies, maybe because of trauma, because we've been hurt in some ways, or we think because our belly doesn't look like Heidi Klum or whatever. But I think if we just come inside for just a second, I mean, try it the next time you go out to eat. It's kind of like, when I was pregnant, I was like, I'll have a cheese quesadilla and I've never ordered one in my life. That sounds great, right? Like you were not a habitual person when you were pregnant. You know what I mean? Like your body was, its little voice was much louder. And I think it's just the same. It's just that we need to be better listeners. Okay. And so you can, if you see your body as separate, which meditation helps enormously with this, you can see that your body is into it. Okay. And it'll say, sitting with this is not like, we just got a puppy. We just got a puppy. And we went to go look at puppies. And I was like, none of these puppies are my puppies. You know, and I could feel myself wanting, because they're beautiful babies. You know what I mean? They're the sweet littlest things. And I could feel myself wanting to analyze it. And I was like, oh, no. If we're going to live like Einstein, it's already all happened anyway, right? We're just trying to figure out. I mean, that to me is what intuition is. The reason why it rings a bell is because it already happened. You know, it's circular, not linear. See, now I'm getting kind of nutty, but I'm kind of nutty.
I love nutty. I love nutty. That's what this podcast is about.
Okay, I'm kind of nutty. I'm just like talking your ear off. But maybe that's why it rings a bell. Maybe it's because it already happened. You're just trying to remember it. You know, if you've ever had a preemie, that's exactly what it feels like. You know, I'm not a medium that I know of. I don't know much about that at all, except for the cool people that I've met that had that. But I have had a preemie and it felt like it already happened. You know, my husband thought I was thought I was going crazy. I was like, my office, I'm concerned. I was smelling smoke. It was like 6 months of running over to my office, thinking it was burning down. I was constantly obsessed with my office burning down. And sure enough, my office burned down. And it was like 6 months later, my husband thought I was crazy. And then I was like, my office is going to flood. It's sort of a long story. But then strangely, the pipes burst, which in Atlanta, that never happens, you know, and my office flooded. I went there that morning and got everything that was paper out of it. And it felt like it happened before. And it was such a relief when it happened because I didn't have to anticipate it anymore. Right. And so that to me seems like a heightened intuition. And at the time, I was meditating more than I think I ever have.
Yeah,
So
I
I
think
don't
that
know. I think it
yeah.
hones that skill, whether you think it's going to or not.
Yeah. Anybody who's had a deja vu has touched on that. That's what
Yeah.
you had is more than a deja vu. But anybody who's had a deja vu has touched on that thinning of the veil where time is not linear. It's all happening right now.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've talked about what intuition is. How do people know that it's not their thinking mind or their brain that is giving them information that feels good? How do they know it's not intuition and it's their brain, or it's their brain and not intuition?
Okay, this is how I think about it with my clients. This helps. So remember when I talked about that downstairs brain, right? It's old, old, old. It's 300,000 years old. It's lizard old, right? So it's obsessed with safety and survival. And it sees sameness as safety. Okay. So if you've been smoking crack and eating birthday cake all day, every day for 20 years, your brain's like, oh, this is working out great. Let's keep doing this because we lived through it. Okay. It's not worried about self-actualization, none of that shit. Okay. That part of your brain is obsessed with trying to get you to do the same things. This is why we feel very comfortable doing something that hurts us. We think it's normal or whatever. It's just familiar. Okay. You can ask yourself, who is talking to me? Is this entity in my head trying to keep me down and keep me doing the same old thing and stay safe and sound, which is lovely. You can tell that part of your brain, thank you so much. Thank you. But that's not who you need to be listening to, right? You want to listen to your true self, right? And so
Yeah.
in order to do that, that part of yourself would be getting like really excited. You would have positive emotions around it. I tell my clients, when you are in alignment with your true purpose, even if it's just what you're going to have for lunch, or even if it's a lifelong change or whatever, it feels good to be in that. There might be butterflies, there might be other things around it, but it is a cocktail that underneath feels kind of good. It is the difference between, if I was like, Maria, come on, let's go down and be on this TV show right now and talk about stress. It'll be so fun. And you'd be like, that sounds good. Like, okay, that's different than Maria. We're going to go jump out of this plane. You might be like, oh, okay. I mean, those are two different, and they're very similar, but we can't just slap anxiety on every single thing. You know what I mean? Like, we got to remember that people who report really low stress report really low happiness. Okay. So that's lame, right? If you ain't stressing, you ain't living, right? So yes, think about the most stressful times in your life. Some of them were really good. Like, I just got a puppy, right? Or, I bought a house. Like, those things are not stress less. They're high up on that list, right? And also, it's all in the way that you look at it. We all know someone who's had this, I'm making quote marks, horrific thing happen, and they say crazy shit like, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. You're like, what are you talking about? How could that be? How can getting cancer be the best thing that ever happened to you? But I can tell you, my man had cancer, and it was for real. Like, my man had some serious shit going on, and it was like a whole year of holy shit. And what we got out of that is amazing. Like, oh my goodness, okay, so I didn't have the cancer, but he would agree that what we got out of that is amazing, and we wouldn't give it back. It's like we kind of want these like cushy, easy lives, but if that happens, Kim Kardashian, then you pick up a bad boyfriend, you know what I'm saying, Kanye West, and like things get bad, you know what I mean? The way that we grow is through overcoming obstacles, right? And so
Indeed.
if you see this thing and you want things to be really, really easy and cushy and stuff like that, obstacles are going to come anyway, honey. You might as well pick what they're going to be. Let it be the book. Right? Let it be the, I don't know what to get for lunch. Let it be I'm going to cure myself with my thoughts of rheumatoid arthritis. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, decide.
Now, this is funny too, because what you were saying about, hey, Maria, let's go on this show and talk about stress. It'll be fun versus jumping out of a plane.
Oh,
I'd be the complete opposite.
Okay. I was totally thinking that. I was thinking, oh my gosh, what if I got it wrong?
I'd be the opposite. But here's the thing, right? Because sometimes, okay, here's an example. What am I going to have for lunch? Sometimes the thing, like you were saying when you're pregnant, that you feel, it just feels right or aligned or what your body needs right now doesn't intellectually seem right. Like
Right.
I just feel like eating French fries right now.
Right.
But that's not healthy,
That's
your
not
brain
good for me.
says.
Right.
But
Yeah. Well, if you dabble in Ayurveda at all, this really rings true with that, right? You're like, oh, I'm pitta. What does this mean? My ego identity is so sad because now I can't have spicy food. Like, you got to remember, like, who's upset? Your ego's upset. Who gives a shit? You know what I mean? She get over it. You know what I mean? Like, you've had to go through lots of changes. I mean, it's intuitive. After you stop eating spicy food, if you are pitta and Ayurveda, there's these three doshas, these three kind of body types. And they give you these things to do. And some of it's really intuitive. You're like, well, I've always loved ice in my drink. That makes perfect sense. And some of it's not. And you just have to roll with it to see how it goes. And then you're like, this makes perfect sense. It actually does hurt me when I have spicy food or whatever it is. But why do I want to be the person who eats spicy food? And people get stuck on that. And then they ruin their whole fucking life. You're like, well, I don't get up early. And I'm like, well, you know what? You're going to miss out on a lot then. Stop telling everybody how you're different than everybody and try to figure out how you're the same. And little doors start to open, and when you let the woo in a little bit with your intuition, that's its way in, right? You get to experience that a little bit and you can't deny it anymore.
What
and
you just said too is important about, for example, the Ayurveda. You said some of it is intuitive. Oh, I've always liked blah, 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 blah. But some of it is not. So I wonder if the discernment here, the intuitive part is that doesn't totally fit, but the intuition, the part of me that I'm tuning into because I've meditated, because I've learned how to make it a habit from the stress therapist, is saying, I need to try this and see what happens. Right.
And like, I have no desire to go scuba diving ever. Never. Like, it kind of scares me and I don't really want to. I don't ruminate about it. I think that's the other thing too. Are you constantly talking about why you don't scuba? Your therapist cares and maybe your spouse. That's it. Okay. No one cares about why you ain't going scuba diving. But if you keep bringing it up and keep bringing it up and keep bringing it up, your therapist is definitely going to think that the thing that you're resisting is going to heal you. Okay. If you never bring it up and it never even dawns on you, but doesn't sound like a good thing, then probably this is not your lifetime to try it out. Okay. But if you're going to go on and on, everybody wants to harp on why they don't do this and why they can't do that and why they can't do this. And I'm always sitting there thinking, that's probably the thing you need to do. I did that. I do a lot of retreats. They're my favorite thing. And all we do is meditate and do yoga. And we have amazing food in the mountains in Georgia. And it's beautiful and wonderful. And I try to expose people, because my whole point is trying to make meditation accessible, right? I want this to be accessible to everybody. Jesus, Buddha, Allah, witches, Susie, whatever you call it, you're welcome, right? And we can fit your meditation practice in there and make it however you want. We learn tons of ways to meditate, tons of ways to make it habitual. And we do have a little bout of silence, which is an important part of meditation retreats. And so I expose my attendees just to a little bit of silence. It's short. It's like 4 hours. Okay. But we're all together. So it's different, right? We're used to communing and, the Buddha called it animal talk, making small talk, whatever. And, it's really geared towards being inward and facing yourself and listening to how you're talking to yourself and what's going on in your head and all the judgments and the running diatribe of what's going on, right? And then we have feedback. And there were a lot of people were like, I hated that. I felt like everybody was mad at me. I couldn't, I couldn't get her attention because I asked them to have custody of their own eyes. Like, be inward. You don't have to look at people because that's kind of talking, right? That's communicating. Try to just let it be about yourself just for once. Everybody's in the room. You can send loving kindness to them. You don't have to look at them or relate to them or any of that. Just see what it feels like. And a lot of people were really resistant to it. It was really difficult for me to not be the guy on Shrinking, the show, and say, that's probably what you need. You probably need some quiet, especially
and if you
you're
tap into your intuition, you're going to know it.
Yes. And then you always get the people that will say things like, oh my gosh, I had no idea until I was quiet for a little bit. Like I was getting my nails done on Thursday and this girl ran up to me. And first of all, she never meditated before. She came on retreat with me. She meditates every day now. She was like, all I can think about is going on a silent retreat. I was so scared. I didn't want to be silent. I wanted to write. I didn't let them write. I didn't let them take pictures. I didn't let them read. I didn't let, you just be quiet. just sit quietly with your meal, mindfully eat, just sit quietly outside. You don't have to, you're not a human doing, right? You're a human being. And she was like, my whole life is different thinking about that silence. She was like, that was so cool for me to do that. And then like, when would you ever do that? You'd never do that. You turn the radio on, you put a podcast on, you listen to Maria, right?
Oh no, I do that all the time because my intuition tells me to. I know I have to.
Yeah. You're better when you do it right. But you wouldn't know unless you gave it a shot. But I think we can sometimes resist. And then we have all these explanations why. And I think sometimes just test yourself, just decide, what if it works and just be a little flexible. And it might be awful and silence might be miserable for you. And that's fine too.
It's probably the thing you need, even if it's miserable.
It probably is.
It's funny that you're bringing this up, truly, because I was just on a women's retreat. I just came back yesterday and it was really,
that's so exciting.
Just like really, it was just friends hanging out. It wasn't a meditation retreat, nothing like that. It was just friends hanging out at a beach house. And one of the women that was there, her life is full of taking care of other people. And she, at the end of the day, it was like 6:30. She turned to me and she goes, wow, we just spent all day just doing nothing. It's like, uh-huh. And she's like, it's great.
Dream come true.
I know you need it. Okay. So I have a question for you around when people are silent though, right? Because here's what comes up a lot in my practice. And this is maybe outside of the intuition subject, but I think you can speak to this. I once had, this was years ago, I had someone call me, who's a new client. She wanted to get into therapy right away. I said, okay, what's happening? I swear, all I was doing was brushing my teeth and I had a panic attack. Like, okay. When the silence happens and then the shit comes to the surface, people talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
What's your
That does happen a lot. Well, I think it's kind of cool to just notice that. Okay. All I have is my own experience as far as sitting there with that. And I have a lot of clients who have a similar experience, but I would notice that I had to have some kind of noise, like the radio should be on, or there should be this kind of thing. And yes, fear is the opposite of love, right? It's definitely fear-based. And I think noticing that right away, and then make your set and setting better, right? So remember, when we're trying to make meditation habitual, it's more important that you show up. It doesn't matter how long you sit there. Okay. Because something is better than nothing 100% of the time. So if you sit there for 1 minute, I applaud that because your ass showed up on the cushion, right? You did the thing, right? And you have a lifelong journey ahead of you, learning how to get to whatever your goal is, right? I'm kind of known around here as a New Year's resolutionist person, but New Year's resolutions work, but not typically the way that we go about them, right? So rather than thinking about January 1st is a magical day and I'm going to meditate every single day for 20 minutes, you could think, well, by the end of 2023, I will be meditating for 20 minutes, okay? Which is like much more attainable and exciting, and you can make goals along the way, right? So I think just sitting there for a minute, okay, and allowing yourself whatever that anxious is. So there are 3 ways that we're usually pulled out of meditation. One of them is, body. We'll start to have these body, oh, my hip hurts, my leg hurts, right? And your body's really smart. Remember, it's trying to get you to not do something new. And it's in control of the pain. Yeah. And the uncomfortable. So it may or may not be real. It sure feels real. Okay. But like your brain is trying to get you to stop meditating. The second one is time. You'll start having lots of thoughts about how you don't have time for it. How much time has it been? How much more time do I have? All that. And then the third one is environment. I should be doing something else. I ought to be doing something else. Usually people that get anxious are on the third one. And you can usually use mantra to calm that part of you. This is all I'm supposed to be doing. I'm only going to do this for 3 minutes. I'm going to handle that in a minute. My one of the monks, Venerable Panawati, who's up in North Carolina, she says, it's kind of like making flower petals around you and you're in the middle of the flower. You're like, okay, I do have to pay the rent. That's true. That thought that just came up, but I'm just going to put that right there. Right. And then you're like, oh, I do have to figure out what's for dinner. I'm going to put that right there. And then you just make all these little petals all around you. But right now, I'm just going to sit in the middle. All those things will be there for me when I'm done. Right. So there are some little tips and tricks that we can do, and those are just a couple. But mostly it's understanding what that part of your brain is doing. And one of the lovely parts about our downstairs brain is it doesn't understand English or language. So you can talk about it and still trick it, right? So that's why we can go to the movies and we're like, oh my gosh, is she going to make it? We think it's real, and it's certainly not. So you have these options to kind of trick your brain into thinking that you're being calm until you actually are. Right? That's basically what you're doing. And then and one of the coolest ways to do that is this yoga nidra, or Joe Dispenza does a lot of this, is certainly sitting there and feeling what it feels like for a part of your body to exist in space. And then, your downstairs brain gets a very clear message that things are okay, and it's in charge of your physical symptoms. And so then you actually feel like things are okay, which also helps with any anxious thoughts that you have, right? They'll come up, but your body feels calm. So you're like, well, I guess that's not that bad, right? When they're in alignment and they're both all riled up, that's when there's a problem. What's cool about meditation is the part of you that gets riled up like that, your limbic system is pressed up against your physical body. And so that's why we feel heartache, like we use words that like we feel those things. And that's very true because your limbic system is pressed up against that part of your brain that's physical. And so you can kind of use that also to your advantage. When you meditate, your prefrontal cortex grows these threads that come down and soothe your downstairs brain without you having to do anything. So rather than thinking of meditation as something that you do when you're upset, which I highly do not recommend, you got to think of it as like my sister has asthma. And so she takes an inhaler every day to prevent an asthma attack that she doesn't feel coming on. It's the chronic versus acute. And then if she does have an asthma attack, it's not so bad, or it never comes along. And so you got to think about meditation as a preventative measure, and that you're putting little things in the bank. And I also tell my clients, if you sit with that anxiety that might pop up, you're going to get really good at honing the skill of allowing yourself to sit there anyway. My mantra for 2 years was, this is all I'm supposed to be doing. Okay. Until finally my brain believed it. But that's why we drink the Kool-Aid, right? We got to think the thing. My brain also thinks Wordle is really important because I'm visiting that every day, right? We convince our brains all these things are very important. And so you can trick it into deciding what you think is important. And then you realize that the things that you really want in your life, like being creative, can become habitual, right? Being spontaneous can become habitual, right? And all of these oxymorons or, paradoxical things are available to us when we know that we can change all the time. Just because I was anxious this last time doesn't mean it will be this time, right? And you have those conversations with your ego in your head when you go to sit and face yourself, of course, in meditation, when that's all you have. And you start to win those private battles, and your true self is going to get louder and louder the more you sit. It really is.
And there we go. Your true self is intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
It's your intuition.
Look at you wrapping it up like a boss.
Because I'm a therapist. This is what I do.
And you're like, and now our time is up. Let's make an appointment for next time. This is like true passion coming through. It's so exciting for me. It is my ethical obligation to teach this thing. It's about as good for you as water, man. And if you're going to meditate versus having a meal, opt for the sit, because I'm telling you, your life will change and you don't even have to do anything.
You literally do nothing. Literally. Well, I have to tell you, I don't know. Before I had the Reluctant Medium podcast, I had the Miracles Happen Fertility podcast. Mm-hmm. I talked about meditation all the time because it is the number one tool that got me out of a very traumatic fertility experience. And the only reason why I did it was because really my intuition was telling me to, but there was science backing it up. And I really wanted to do my dissertation work on meditation. Do you know they told me no? No,
Yeah,
I
you
wanted to
can't
do.
call it that. I teach meditation in schools and I have to call it mindfulness because if I say meditation, they think I'm going to come in and tell everybody to, give money
Some
to Jesus.
religious thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, I called it mindfulness. They told me it wasn't measurable enough or whatever. And now,
Tell
of
that to John
course,
Kabat-Zinn, right?
that's who I was quoting, right? That is the only reason why I started meditation was because of MBSR, mindfulness based stress reduction.
Sure,
There's so
sure.
much science behind it, but they wouldn't let me. It's too complicated. Wait until after you
Right.
graduated to do
And
that.
also remember, it really doesn't matter what kind of meditation you're doing. MBSR and transcendental meditation are both lovely and they do have the capital behind it to do those studies, but don't think that you have to do something extremely
Exactly.
formal to get the job done. That's what I mean by accessibility. I can teach you how to do a touching meditation, a walking meditation. Now, same point though, Maria. I get a little cranky when people say things like running is my meditation and sewing is my meditation. That shit ain't meditation. That's sewing and running. Okay. That's like saying like talking is my singing. It's not the same. Okay. So you got to be careful with that. Okay. You got to be really careful because meditation.
Oh, I would love to know the difference for that because I actually talk about, count the trees as you're walking,
Oh, I think that is being extreme. That's being mindful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that is mindfulness. I think it's important. I think it's great if you're not
present
listening.
moment. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you can it's the idea that, nothing's going to happen in the future. It's all going to happen now and nothing happened in the past. It all happened now. You better be now or you're going to miss it. Right.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think it's important to reel yourself in if you're going to lug something into this moment, be choose if you can't have it be the exact thing that you're in, but being in the zone and being mindful and hyper focused and having gamma waves and maybe giving a talk at Dancing Free Festival gets you into the like mojo or whatever. And that's lovely because you're focusing on one thing. But remember, meditation, you want to be able to get this practice where the mindful thing that you're doing is sitting there. Okay. And so meditation is not focused on nothing. Like you're not trying to clear your head. That's a big misconception. It's focused on one thing. Okay. And so when you are running, there's many things. Okay. And that's why we bring it down to the breath because you got to check. Are you breathing? That you can't, if you are checking on whether or not you're breathing right now, it's not possible to be someplace else. This is probably from Eckhart Tolle, probably. Of course, I don't get anything from me. I get it all from other people. Right. But I think this is an Eckhart Tolle point.
We're all one anyway.
Right. It's all one love. And so I want you to explore the idea of, and that's why on my podcast, I give you a little lesson and here's a cool therapy, whatever. And then we meditate together and I'll bring you in and then you're by yourself for a few minutes. And then I bring you out. And a lot of when I was like at Podfest and I was getting all this feedback about they were like, you cannot have dead air on podcast. I'm like, I have to, because it has to be quiet. Now I've put in binaural beats, kind of help you nudge you along in that direction. But you got to be by yourself. You got to be with you. You got to face yourself. And you can't go on and on about all these things that are wrong with you and what's wrong with you. You're lovely. You haven't even spent any time with yourself. Okay. So if you could just opt for like 1 minute. And if it feels anxious, be like, oh, here comes an anxious feeling, right? Separate it from yourself. Hi, anxious feeling. Imagine that you're at the beach and every little thought that comes in is like a wave. You can't stand there and be like, I'm holding back a tsunami, man. You just sit there, let it come in and it will likely dissipate. Just like, cravings and, when we get into like addiction thoughts and things like that, let it in, probably roll right back out. Right. And just allow it. Just be into it. Be like, oh, there's a thought about planning. If you label it, somehow it goes way better. Your ego loves that stuff, labeling everything. Right. And let it in. Oh, there's a worry thought. There it goes. And just see. And meditate with me. Come on retreat with me. I love to meditate with everybody. It's my very favorite thing.
Where can people find out about the retreats and podcasts and everything?
My website is ilovetherapy.com. Got in there early with the
yes, you
URL.
did.
So I mean, you can go to stresstherapist.com, too, but I love therapy. It tends to really be the stick, right? Like it's like a sticker. It's easy to remember. And my podcast is called Stress Therapy. And you can learn about retreats and other offerings that I have there. I have a retreat at the beach where you're just on vacation by yourself and just occasionally you come down and like meditate and do yoga. It's pretty laid back. And then you can go to the Sea Turtle Hospital or you can go to some tour over there. And then we go and watch dolphins and meditate. My assistant and I found the coolest places all over Jekyll Island, right off the coast of Georgia. We're going to be there this summer. And then I have a retreat in the mountains. It's a little bit more immersive, where you're eating the best food. But I have the most amazing yoga teacher there. She's Iyengar Yoga, which you might know, like they have to go to school for like 8 years for. It's like being a doctor to get this yoga. And she's just, oh my gosh, she's also a Zen Buddhist. And so we get her side of things. And I'm going to be inviting my friend, I think, Mark from the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, who worked with John Kabat-Zinn. And he's going to come up and do his little thing. He's so cool. And that's in October and it's up in the Georgia mountains. And there's all these outdoor saunas and beds and hot tubs. And I mean, it's so cool. It's so amazing. And we just
sounds like happiness.
Learn all this meditation. And then we go off on our way and have amazing.
And is that on I Love Therapy?
It is. It's all there under retreats. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Cheri, thank you so much. I will be linking up to all of this stuff, of course, in the show notes. And go listen to Cheri's podcast too, Stress Therapy. It's also linked into my show notes all the time because we are part of the Ethereal Network together, which is how we met.
We're stars.
Yes. Oh my God. So no matter what episode you click on in the Reluctant Medium podcast, you will find Cheri's podcast as well, because I link up to it every time. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
I'm hoping you got a useful nugget or two from today's podcast episode. May you be well, and I'll see you next time.